So hello guys, so in this video we are going to integrate Django with React using Postgres, and we are going to use Docker and Docker Compose. So let's get right into it. So the first step is cloning this repository, and I've cloned it and I'm using Visual Studio Code as my default editor, and this is the terminal. So let me first initialize a Python environment. So I'm going to use Python version 3.10, and then it's going to be venv, and then I'll just activate my virtual environment within this directory. Yeah, so these are the files, and the first thing is I'm going to install Django. You can install whatever versions of Django, but I'm going to install Django. It's going to be version less than 4.3, comma it's going to be greater than or equal to 4.2. So I'm going to install the LTS version, so it's going to be 4.2.8. so that is the Django version which I'm going to use. So and now, yeah, so I've installed Django, and this is my root directory, and over here I'm just going to create a directory called apps where my front-end folders and my backend folders will be here. So I'll just cd into apps and I'll just clear it, and now I'm going to initialize a Django project. So it's going to be Django admin start project. It's going to be, I'll call it backend, and it has created a backend over here. Yes, and you can see this is our settings.py file, and yeah, so let us actually run this app. So I'll just cd into backend, and now I'm going to run python manage.py run server. Yeah, so I just want the app running. So okay, so since I'm using 0.0.0, it is asking me for the allowed hosts, because by default if I'm using local host it will work. Yeah, if I have a local host port 8000 it will work, but if you're going to use 0.0.0.0, this is a whitelisted IP address, so you need to have the allowed hosts as everything to work. So yeah, this is the default project which we get from the create Django project. So now our first step is to integrate and install the Postgres DB. So yeah, let's even start that. So the first step is, like, inside of apps I'll create a new folder called Docker. So inside this all my Docker files will be there. So let's create another folder called backend, and over here I'll create a new file called docker file. Yeah, so if I type python dash capital V, I'll get the version of Python which I'm using. So this is the version I'll be using. You can use any other version if you want, like whatever version you are starting with, so it's better you use that. So let's start by, okay, so it is suggesting me that from Python 3.12, and then I'll just have it a tag of slimbuster. Okay, and now I'll just have a working dir. So my working dir will be /apps/backend. So this will just correspond to this directory, so that will be my working dir. And now copy, I'll just copy .apps/back end to dot. yeah, so all my apps from here will be copied into the Docker file, and I'm going to run a command. So that's going to be python 3 hyphen, it's going to be hyphen m ve venv, and then that will be in the directory of otpvenv. Yeah, and yeah, so this is chaining commands. So okay, yeah, so this, yes, okay, so otpvenv, it's been python installed. First I'll upgrade my pip, and then I'll just install the requirements.txt. Okay, and what I'm going to do is option and then chmod plus x is going to be apps backend and then entry point.sh, and I'm going to have a command executable. It's going to be slash apps slash, it's just this one. This is what I'm going to run as my entry file. So we are going to create this in a moment. So it's going to be inside apps backend. Over here it's going to be a new file, entrypoint entry point.sh. So let's start working with the entry point.sh file. So since it's going to be a shell script, we'll start it with hash and then an exclamatory mark and bin slash bash, and we will first type echo waiting for Postgres, and then it will be sleep. We will sleep it for 5 seconds, and then echo Postgres started, and now we can start with migrations. So the first one is echo migrating database. So we can have, it should be, since our in the Docker file we specified otpvenv bin, so this is how we should actually run. So it will be otpvenv bin, and then it's going to be python, and then manage.py migrate. So we will even make our migrations. So it's going to be make migrations, and then we are going to migrate, and then once it's done, database migrated, and then yeah, and then we should create a super user. So echo creating super user. So it's not going to be this, we are going to call it super user, and then it's going to be no input, and super user created, and then collect files, and then we'll collect the static files, and then we'll just leave it. And now where we are going to do starting server, so it is going to be gunicorn, it's going to be backend, and then wsj application, and then it will be bind. I'll just give it a port 0, and then port 8000. Workers, we will just give it 4 as of now, and let us make this somewhat generic. So it's going to be app underscore port. We will have it as an environment variable. So this is how we declare an environment variable. So we'll just map it to port. If it's not there, if the port variable is not mentioned in our env file, we will just use 8000 by default. Yeah, so in case if you want to run it in a different way, you can actually use it. And again, we're going to use the shebang. It's going to be a $sign and then the app port. So that's how we actually declare and use an env file, env variable inside a shell script. So this is the entry point file. So we need to, there is no such command called super user, so we are going to create the command. So for that maybe we can python manage.py start is going to be start app. We'll call it custom commands. So yeah, the custom commands is actually created. So I think Git is not working properly, so let's actually create a dot git ignore file. So we'll just include, we don't need bin, we don't need lib, we don't need that lib64. Let's hit save. If this is still taking time, you can actually hit Control Shift P and type reload window, and that will actually work. Yeah, most of the thing is actually, I even don't want include. So yeah, so our custom commands. So inside the custom commands, you are going to create a new folder called management. Oops, I made a mistake. So it is management. Yeah, so now we are going to create a new custom command. So it's going to be inside the management directory, and inside that we are going to have commands and then su superuser.py. So yeah, so we'll just create it into a package by having the init.py. So inside commands there is an init.py, and over here also it should be init.py. So super user. Yeah, so we are going to use the super user. So whatever we gave in the entry point.sh file, yeah, so whatever the name we give it here should, you should again rename this file over here. So and now since we are creating a custom command from django.core.management import base command, and we are going to even include the command error. Yeah, and then I don't want like this, from auth import there's something called get user model, so this will work. And then since we are going to use decouple, so that is a way to import .env file variables into our project. So what we can do is we can install its python decouple GUNICCORN, it's GUnicorn. Yeah, we will even require white noise to be installed. So white noise, so that is a package. Oops, I had a typo, it's white noise. Yeah, so that package will be used to, yeah, to serve static files, and this you can use. Yes, and now let's call the command class, that is what, and we'll give it a help. Yeah, create a super user. I don't want these things, so yeah, user is get user model, and now we'll have a we'll have a try, and I don't want all these things. Yeah, so over here itself we'll have, it's going to be Django super user name. Yeah, and then we can cast it as a string, and we don't need to give any defaults. You can actually provide it, but there is no need to give a default. And similarly we'll have it for password, and then we actually need an email. So Django super user email password. Yeah, and now we'll just create a user object. So user is, it's going to be user, and then we can just pass in the email is Django super user email, and then username. We should not give the password like that, and then you should actually hit user.set password. Okay, so this is suggesting me, and then you should actually give is super user is staff, and then you should save it. And then there is even user dot is admin is true. Okay, so user dot save, and then now we can actually write it. So self dot std write. Yeah, so successfully created a new super user, and we don't need this. So and then except exception as e, we can then just raise the command error as e. That's all. Yeah, so and the user is not defined, so user is get user model. Yeah, so it is actually working, and to check whether it's actually working properly, let's go to the settings.py over here, and then it's going to be custom commands, and let's actually type python manage.py. Yeah, so our custom command is actually visible, and it is actually listed over here. Yeah, so these are the default Django inbuilt apps, and this is our custom app, and we have created an app called custom commands, and it has a super user command over here. So that one is working perfectly. As of now everything is working, and next we have even created a Docker file for Python. Now is to create a Docker compose file. So you can actually have it as docker compose.yaml. It should be a YAML file. You can even give it as YML, but I prefer giving it as YAML. Yeah, and now let's create a Docker file for let's give it a version, and then I'll stick to version 3, and no, this is not what I want. So okay, so I'll call it backend, and then with a colon, and it's going to be, I'll just give it a container name. So I want it backend. So after the, and then I'll give it a build, not a path, but it will have a context, and my Docker file is in apps, and then Docker, it is there in backend Docker file. Okay, this understood. And I'll just give it the ports 8. Map my backend to port 8000, and my env file is going to be /env .env. Yeah, it was that, and then it depends on db. Okay, so and now it's going to be my db, and now I'm going to use okay, so this is suggesting me some credentials, and env file Postgres. I don't want 12.1, I can have it as 15 Alpine. So this is the version of Postgres which I'm going to use in this, and I'll just expose the default port, and then where it will save my volumes. So it's going to be volumes, and then I'll just have it a variable called db data. It is var lib postgres sql data. Okay, this seems to be a good file. And okay, so as of now we should be able to log in, and let's see what's gonna happen. So we have actually completed the process for backend. So you need to have Docker installed. So if I type Docker, I get this. You should not have any error, and to have multiple services running, you need Docker Compose. This one is important. So let's have Docker Compose up dash dash build. So okay, DB services must be a list. Okay, so I forgot to actually, there should be a space, and there's even another error where I didn't give the volumes as DB data. Yeah, that should work as of now. So let's actually start. Okay, it's complaining me that there is no env file, so let's actually create that. Totally forgot about that. So for the env file, it should have a Postgres GRES, and then it should have a DB. So this is going to be the DB name. So I'll just call it root, and now Postgres DB user password. You can actually give a complex password, but I'm just going to stick it to root, and we should actually give the Django super username. I'll give it admin, and then super name password is also admin, and you need to have the email. So Django super user email, so that's going to be admin@admin.com. You can give whatever you want, but I'll stick to this as of now. So, and you totally forgot about the most important one, the settings.py, and to use PostgresDB for this. So I'll just comment this down, and now data. Okay, I'll just copy it, now paste it, and now comment, and now hashtag using Postgres SQL. So it will be .postgres SQL, and it's gonna be name, and then user. So user is, and then it's gonna have a password that is going to be Postgres, and now post. Okay, and now port. Yeah, so these things, there is actually a good way, so let's do that one. So let us first import from decouple import config. I want my debug to be, yeah, so it will be, I'll call it Django debug cast bool. Default will be false, and this is going to be my secret key. And I'll just give it a control X, and now it's going to be config of, it's going to be Django secret key, and then it will be I'll cast it as a string, and I'll give it a default FAULT. So the default will be a thing which I pasted. I don't want this one. This looks to be good. And now allowed host custom commands. I don't want to render any templates. Yeah. So now Postgres user is cast. I don't want there shouldn't be any default values. Postgres user, password, and now DB, there is a name, and that's all. So if all of that, then I'll use Postgres DB. Wait, yeah, I'll just indent everything. Yes, perfect. So the name will be Postgres DB, user will be Postgres user, password will be Postgres password, and host. Okay, so host is, what is the name which we are giving it in Docker Compose? That will be this. Okay, so let's give a print statement. Print using Postgres SQL. Okay, so let's give it a try. What's going on? Yeah, so Docker Compose up dash build. So my Docker isn't running. So now in the top nav bar, you will get to see this. This is how the Docker hub, and now if my Docker is running, and let's see what's happening. Okay, so it is pulling my database images. So once it's done, let's get right into the video. Yeah, okay, so I actually made a mistake, and there are two mistakes which I actually made. If you are a good developer, then you might have just found that. So there is no requirements.txt, so that is the first one. So I'll hit ls, so, and now just pip freeze into requirements.txt. So this is how it works. And for white noise, we need to have a middleware. So let's go to middlewares, and it's going to be just, yeah, this is the white noise middleware that is actually used to serve the static files. So let's give it another try. So hopefully this time it should work. Okay, so now I even get this errors. Okay, so what does this error say is like, we didn't even install the scalable package to connect to the Postgres SQL. So like, this is the package which we are going to use. So pip install scalable binary. So yeah, I have stopped it, but my database is running. The error showed in the backend. So let's install the scalable binary package, and now let's again pip freeze into requirements.txt and see what actually changed. Yeah, so this is actually changed, and now let us run it. So hopefully all the errors would have gone, and let's check this time. Okay, so now all the databases, all the database is actually running, and it didn't create the super user, so that was one mistake, and we didn't declare the static root. So again, let's do those two. So let's have a static root, and then I'll just call it static, and let's go to my entry point file, and I'll just remove this no input. So it's just going to be super user, and then I'll actually pipe it with something called true. So that is the important one, because if this fails, this complete build should not exit. So we'll just pipe it with true, and now hopefully let us go to, yeah, so let us go to the same terminal. I'll go to the root where my entire project lives, and I'll just give a Docker compose down. You can also control C many times to actually stop these servers, but you can also use this to bring down all the running servers. So yeah, it brought down everything. So let us clear it, and now let's give docker compose up dash build. Okay, so this time everything should work. So once this is done building, let's get to it. Okay, so this time all the commands ran perfectly, and now let's go to port 8000. So okay, but let us go to the admin. Yeah, everything is actually working. I forgot what password I gave, so it is actually admin. So both are admin. So I'm able to go to my database and I'm able to log in, and this is my Django admin. And for the home page, we still did not have any APIs exposed. Our only URLs was this admin. So yeah, it worked like a charm. So this is one, and the next is we are going to build the front end. So for that we'll be using React. So I'm just going to bring the Docker compose down, and now we are going to have a simple front end which we are going to use it for React. Yeah, so let us clear it, and I'll just close this terminal. And okay, so over here let us cd into in the apps. I'm just going to go npx create white. Yeah, so yes, so I'll give it a title of frontend as my project name. I'm going to use React and TypeScript. So cd into frontend and then npm I. So you can use npm I or install, both will work. And yeah, let's see over here, frontend. So this is the, I don't want this. So let's go to this Docker compose. Let's paste it. Okay, so our backend is running now, and it has actually installed an npm run dev that will run in port 5173. So let's create a new tab of 5173, and yeah, so our React app is actually working. And so now we should actually build a Docker file for it. So new file, so frontend, and now Docker file. Yeah, so I am using Node version 18. So let's go to node/v. So I'm gonna use Node Alpine. So that will be my starting version. So from my base image is going to be Node Alpine. So I'm going to give my working dir as /apps/frontend. Yeah, and now I'll just copy everything from .apps/frontend to my, it's going to be apps/frontend to dot. Yeah, so and I'll run the command npm install. So since I'm going to copy everything in the front-end folder in my apps front-end, so all these files will actually be working properly. I'll just move this readme to the root of the project. Yeah, so let me close everything and go to apps front-end. So yeah, everything looks perfect. So yeah, so first I'll install it, and I'll just run npm cmd and we're going to be npm run. we are going to create a command called deploy and we are going to run it. So yeah, so how that's going to be done is we are going to install serv it's serve. So this will help us to serve the front end folder. So yeah, and so let's go to frontend package.json and instead of preview is going to be deploy ploy. It's going to be deploy. So it's going to be served list. So before that I'm going to build the files and we are going to serve the list. That's also by default it will serve in port 3000. So yeah, this is pretty good for us. So let's start. Our Docker file is actually running and we have created that, and let's go to Docker compose, and instead of db let us actually give it a front end. So for front end, what are we going to do? We are going to like run the Docker file which we have done, which we have created, and we are going to expose it. For that we don't need any dependencies. So yeah, that's all. I don't need a depends on Docker file, but we need a volumes. Because we need to have the volume. So that will be the host path will be node modules. That's going to be in it's going to be in apps/frontend/node modules. So that is the correct path for it. And we exposed our ports, and everything seems to be perfect. Over here it's going to be node modules, and we'll even have Nginx running. So let's give it Nginx container name. Okay, so let's get that also running. So go to apps, Docker, let's create a new file. It's going to be Nginx and then Docker file. So this is the most important file where we are going to use Nginx for us. So let's actually import Nginx. So import Nginx. So what we'll do is we'll just give it a tag called table alpine, and then we are going to run. So we are going to remove the default config which is present in the default config, and then we are going to copy. So copy .app/docker/nginx config to etc config conf d, and then this will be as nginx conf. Nginx conf. So this will be that, and we are going to have a command executable. So we are going to disable the nginx debug. We are going to use it on a global and daemon off. Perfect. So these 4 lines are important. It will be in /etc nginx conf d nginx conf. Perfect. So now this nginx conf file is very important, and so it's pretty big file. So I'm just going to copy paste it. You can I'll explain it. So this is the nginx conf which we are going to use. So this is just we are going to create a front end server and a back end server. So this front end and back end should be the variables whatever you give it in the Docker Compose file. So I gave here backend and front end, whether if you're giving this as www or this as web or this as server or API and then this as website. So whatever you give, whatever you change it over here, this should also be changed in the Nginx conf. So this is where it will be looking. So since we are using Docker Compose, we don't need to use the specify IP addresses or anything like that. We'll just be using these variables, so Docker will swap it out for us. And we are going to listen on port 80. Nginx by default listens on port 80, and that's for the default HTTP server. For HTTPS, we actually need the 443 expose, so we'll just do HTTP for now. And for all our route will be proxy passed to the front end server, which will be running on port 3000. If we have, and then this is to serve some Django static files if there are any. But if we have for example, if you're having a subdomain called api/api.yourdomainname.com, then you could actually do whatever you want. Yeah, so if you're having something like .api and then your domain name, you can actually customize based on that. So yeah, so this is the Nginx conf, and yeah, let's actually give it a try. Frontend Nginx. Yeah, so container name is going to be Nginx apps Nginx docker file, and then that will be on port 80, and volumes is, this is not the volume will be static. Yeah, you can call it static. So that will be apps, and that will be my backend static. So this is where our Django statics are done, and we don't need anything that depends on. Yeah, and now this should be the static. So okay, so let's actually give it a shot and see what's happening. So if I hit ls, so ls, and now let's give a Docker Compose up build. Okay, so once this is done, we'll get right back next to you. So looks like everything ran perfectly. It actually built, and okay, let's see what is, yeah, and it started accepting connections at port 3000. So let's check what's happening. So let me go to, okay, I think the Nginx is not working properly. Let's go to Nginx. Yeah, Nginx exited with code. Backend. Okay, so it said that Nginx could not find the backend port 8000 since it is sleeping. So let us give Nginx, and let's give it a depends on. Let's give it depends on backend, frontend, and then it even depends on DB. No, if these two are running, it will start running. So okay, so let's go to Docker Compose down. So yeah, it actually did not run because since my backend was waiting for 5 seconds, by that time it could not actually have a service running on that port, so that was a problem. So now let us again try running that up. Okay, so Nginx, okay, so this time it did not exit, it is actually running. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, so it is actually running. So whatever URLs over here, it will actually work, and our entire React app with static are actually served. And if I have even my Django backend is running, if I go to port admin, yeah, I am authenticated. I can again log out, log in again. So I gave it as admin, yeah. So the everything is actually working. Even on port 3000 it will work. Yeah, so this is a project. And yeah, so if you like these type of contents, you can actually like, subscribe, and share this video. And yeah, see you the next time, and comment down what you want to see next. And thank you.